listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in and glad to have you with me. Of course, we continue to count you down to LSU Vanderbilt Saturday night in Tiger Stadium, but I do want to kind of step away from that a little bit and give some thoughts on the player-only meeting that LSU held earlier in the week and just kind of all the talk around that, because now we have players on the record and Brian Kelly on the record about it. So kind of want to let you hear what both had to say. And it reminded me of something that Brian Kelly said back in the spring, because there's always the negative connotation around a players-only meeting, right? And that's not always the case. But I think with LSU's situation, it's definitely not the case. I think it's actually a huge positive. And I think Brian Kelly's comments from back in the spring really illustrate that. So we'll obviously go through that. We have an official designation now on both Garrett, Dellinger, and Miles Frazier as the SEC availability report dropped on Wednesday night. So we'll take a look at that. And, of course, Tiger Hoops. Matt McMahon's club, there were wheels up for the Greenbrier on Wednesday. They take on Pitt at 1:30 Central Friday. So give you a brief thumbnail preview on LSU and the Pitt Panthers, the stiffest test that LSU has faced to this point. You put Kansas State in the rearview mirror, and now Pitt becomes your biggest challenge so far of the young season. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. All of that greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media. Twitter X at Musso Matthew. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Matthew Musso 1. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into it. We'll start with the injury updates, then get into the players-only meeting. Brian Kelly on the SEC coaches teleconference on Wednesday did have an update on Garrett Dellinger.
He practiced a little bit yesterday. We're taking it day by day. Look, I think it's important when you're coming back from this tightrope surgery that, there's kind of stages. You don't throw him in for everything. Yesterday, he was part of our pass protections and, he felt comfortable there. Today, we're going to get him involved in the run game. We're making progress. So, I would say that I'm optimistic, but, each day we've got to work on, building that confidence where he feels he can go out and be an asset for us.
So, taking it day by day, when Brian Kelly said he practiced yesterday, he meant Tuesday, and they eased him in mainly in the pass. When he said he's going to practice today, that was obviously Wednesday, and we were going to ease him into the run game portion of it, and get him back to where he can, feel like, as you heard him say right there, be an asset for them. That checks out with the designation that he has officially for Wednesday on Wednesday night. Garrett Dellinger is questionable for the game versus Vanderbilt. I think whenever you hear a coach say that we're easing him in and he is practicing, questionable makes a lot of sense. You'll have two more availability reports Thursday evening and Friday. You'll have three. Thursday, Friday, and then 90 minutes before a kickoff. So a lot can change. We'll keep an eye on Dellinger if he's upgraded to probable or if he's taken off the report entirely. That would obviously be a good thing. You need Garrett Dellinger back. I mean, we've all said it. I'm not the first. I'm just the latest that Garrett Dellinger had graded out to be your best offensive lineman throughout the season up to the point where he got hurt against Texas A&M. And you could point to a lot of LSU's offensive struggles, not all of them, but a lot of them as a direct, domino effect to that Dellinger injury. That's a big, important piece for you on the offensive line. So getting him back would be huge. Now, again, it's almost a month since he's played, so when he is back, it might not be just full bore ready to go, but any help you can get out of him is massive for this team and the hopes of them returning some of that offensive success. The other one to keep an eye on, Miles Frazier. Of course, Frazier went down early in the game against Florida, did return, but it was not until midway through, really, the second half. I'll remind you, Brian Kelly at the beginning of the week said they felt good about Frazier, that he'd be able to be out there and practice, and they felt good about him going on Saturday. Miles Frazier officially listed as questionable on the availability report ahead of the Vanderbilt game. So, again, keep an eye on that as that progresses and see where that might take the LSU offense. I've told you, I think if you get one of those guys back, like if Frazier can go, that opens up more for you at left guard, especially with Tyree Adams being able to really kind of make a return last week. He was a little rusty, but that's a guy who Brian Kelly said leading into the Florida game was probably a week away, and Florida would just be an emergency. Frazier going down was that emergency. But now, if he was really a week away, is he ready to be full go? If so, I mean, I think you would probably see him start in place of Dellinger if he can't go instead of Paul Mubenga. But if you need both, Mubenga and Adams are both there. So there are options for LSU, but of course you would want Dellinger and Frazier to be ready to go so you can have your offensive line finally back at full strength. Okay, on to the players-only meeting. And as said off the top, they always seem to get a pretty negative connotation. And when Brian Kelly was on the SEC Coaches Teleconference, he was asked about that, the negative connotation that comes along with the players-only meeting and what he heard from his team after they held theirs.
Perspective is sometimes, well, there's a players only meeting, there's a friction between the coaches and the players. That's not the case. What the player only meeting was really about, and this was shared to me through our leadership council, was that we got to play better, and we can't stop talking about, well, we should have had this or we should have had that. We got to play better. We got to stop making excuses. And so, from that perspective, we followed it up with another meeting and got a cross section of what the opinions were. And our guys want to be coached harder. Our guys want to stick with our process and no complaining, get out there and get the job done.
So I play you that because obviously, look, it's going to be more impactful to hear it from the players itself. And we're going to Will Campbell here momentarily. And Will Campbell on Tuesday at player availability was, he's on another level, y'all. But I play you the Brian Kelly cut because I think it's really easy to just, hear a coach say something like that and go, well, of course the coach is going to say that. He's not going to tell you if there's friction or whatnot. But remember what Brian Kelly said there, where it's, people think there's friction, and that's not what this was. What it was conveyed to me was that they feel like they need to play better. They need to stop making excuses. They need to play up to the standard, and that they want to be coached harder and all that. So keep that in mind. And listen to what Will Campbell said Tuesday night about the players-only meeting.
We're just talking things out and, everybody get on the same page. And we've been in a situation to, win a lot of games, but at the end of the day, we have to finish. And that's the thing, you go back and look, we've led going into the fourth quarter out of 3 of the 4 losses that we have. We have to finish games, and that's something that we haven't done. And it's not a coaching problem. It's not a scheme. It's none of that. It's us. We have to be able to do the little things right. And when you don't deserve to win, quite frankly. Whenever you have, I think against Florida, we had 13 negative plays. You don't deserve to win an SEC football game on the road in a hostile environment against a good football team with a good coaching staff. It's just not what it is. This isn't high school football. So if we want to win, we have to do the little things right for 4 straight quarters.
He said it's us. The most impactful part of that, and it was all really impactful, was when he said, it's not a coach thing, it's not a scheme thing, it's us. That they've led in the fourth quarter in 3 out of the 4 losses, the only one being Alabama that they haven't. They have to finish games. It's something we've talked about throughout. And yes, I will say that some of that absolutely falls on coaching, but at some point it does fall on the players on the field as well. It's a team effort, and none of it's been good enough. So to hear Will Campbell, your leader, a guy who's going to be a first-round draft pick in April, who could easily have his eyes on other things, right? The best player on your team, standing up in front of the team, in front of the state, and saying those types of things, that should inspire confidence in how hard the team will play going forward in these final 2 games. That they still have something to play for, and what that basically is trying to uphold at least a little bit of the standard of LSU. And Will Campbell also, in his fiery media session, talked about upholding what's left of the standard this year, but also failing.
Outside the building, well, at the end of the day, if you don't win a championship here, it's a failure. And I agree with that. But we still have a lot to play for. I mean, 6-6 is a lot worse than 8-4. So we have to go win 2 more games. And, everybody else can doubt us, all that. But we know what we have to do to finish this year on the right way and get into a good bowl game and do what we have to do. And that's really the bottom line.
If you don't win a championship here, it's a failure. And he says he agrees with that. But he's also right. 8-4 is way better than 6-6. Is 8-4 where you want to be? No. Is that okay? No. Is it a regression from the first 2 years under Brian Kelly? Yes, it is. Steeply.
Recently, a new client called me and started by saying, "Mr. Morgan, I really need your help, but I'm just a nobody." Those words stunned me, and I immediately called him back, and we're now helping him and his family after a terrible accident. I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Everybody who comes to our firm at their time of need is a somebody. I grew up poor, but my grandmother was like a queen to us. At Morgan & Morgan, our goal is to level the playing field for you and your family at your time of need. The insurance company has unlimited money and resources. You need a firm who can fight them toe-to-toe. For right at 30 years, we have fought them in courtrooms throughout America. Our results speak for themselves. And always remember this, everybody is a somebody, and nobody is a nobody. Visit forthepeople.com to learn about our firm, Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
Injured? Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
Where you won 10 games and went to Atlanta in year 1. Where you won 10 games with a historically bad defense and had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. Yeah, it's a very, very steep regression. But again, to hear a guy like Will Campbell, best player on the team, first-round pick, leader, come out and say, we failed, but there's still a lot to play for, and we have to play hard to win these games because 8-4 is a hell of a lot better than 6-6, and he's right. And when I heard all of that, everything that I just played for you, where you have Brian Kelly talking about, there's a negative connotation with players' meetings. That's not really what this is. When you hear him say, they said it's on them. They want to play, but it's the players have to play better. And you hear Campbell echo the same thing, where that's what was conveyed to Brian Kelly. It reminded me of back in early March, LSU had completed 2 spring practices. 2. And Brian Kelly was talking about his team, and he mentioned the players and them taking more control.
When it's a player-led football team, you're always going to be in a much better situation than if the coaches have to lead everything. And this is the closest that I've had in my time here at LSU that this is a player-led football team. So those are good signs.
It's back in March, y'all. Player-led football team. Closest I've had to a fully player-led football team, and that normally leads to good things. It's a good sign. Look, again, is the record where you want it to be? No, it's not. But when I hear everything that the coach said, that the players said about this meeting, it drives home player-led team. And ultimately, I know nobody really wants to hear this right now, but ultimately, that is a major step in the right direction. Like when I hear people nationally talk about, Brian Kelly doesn't fit at LSU, his style doesn't translate, he's still trying to fix it. I disagree strongly. And this situation kind of illustrates that, does it not? Where you have the coach back in March talking about this being a player-led team and that leading to some of the success. And he was even asked later in that press conference about examples of player-led teams, and he said when the players take control and, hold their teammates up to the standard of LSU, when they're pointing out that this is not the standard we have around here. Hello, that's what just happened in that players-only meeting. It is a direct correlation. So when I hear national, and the national narrative on Brian Kelly is what it is, and it's very similar to Kim Mulkey. They look for any slight crack in the armor to just tear the man down. And quite honestly, just as an LSU alum, that really pisses me off because people love to take shots at the state of Louisiana in general, too, which also pisses me off. It's very much we're just the state that gets, I don't want to say talked about behind your back because they'll do it out in public. It just can give a very two-faced, because, when everyone comes down here, they love it, the people are so great, the hospitality, all that. But then, it's whatever. I don't need to get into all of that. But that is culture building here. That is. Where you have a player-led team that you're talking about back in March, and then when you get to your toughest point in the season, the players, the leaders, take control of the situation and hold others to the standard. That's the foundation of a culture. That's big for the program going forward. Do you wish it never got to this point? Of course. But it did, and the good thing about it, if there's a silver lining, is you had these players be able to step up and be like, hey, this isn't how we're going to do it anymore. So we'll get our answer. That's a great step in the right direction, but we'll get our answer on Saturday. How much the players' message resonated with each other. Said it going into the Florida game. Wanted to see LSU come out with some piss and vinegar in that game. Didn't really see it. After that meeting, after not winning a game in a month, and you better have some piss and vinegar at home Saturday night in Death Valley against Vanderbilt. We'll see. But ultimately, I take away everything from that players-only meeting as a big positive for hopefully the final two games of this season, but definitely going forward with the culture of this program. All right. Let's punctuate this with some LSU men's hoops. Tigers 4-0. They're heading up to the Greenbrier. They'll play 2 games up there in West Virginia. Their first game will be Friday, 1:30 p.m. Central in the afternoon against the 5-0 Pitt Panthers out of the ACC. This is LSU's toughest test early in the season. You've passed your first test on the road at Kansas State. Now you move forward here. You'll face Pitt and then either UCF or number 19 Wisconsin. So you could face an undefeated ACC team and then a ranked team in Wisconsin. Central Florida, not too shabby themselves early in the season. But let's focus in on Pitt here to start. Told you the Panthers are 5-0. When you look down at the schedule, okay, it might not be a murderer's row here early on in conference play. Their most impressive win is against West Virginia. They beat West Virginia by 24 in their only game against Power 4 competition. Obviously, Pitt, West Virginia, big rivalry. To do that, that's going to hype them up a good bit. But you look at their other margin of victories. I mean, they've just dominated all their non-conference opponents. Radford, it was 96-56. Murray State, 83-68. Gardner-Webb, 83-64. VMI, 93-48. That's an impressive margin of victory. Good teams are going to absolutely just dominate inferior. And, I mean, look, you've seen LSU go 4-0. Their 2 dominant wins against ULM, against Kansas State, and then they, had to have second-half comebacks against Alabama State and Charleston Southern. So I do think even though you have one Power 4 win if you're Pitt, the dominance they've showed through their first 5 games against all non-conference opponents is pretty huge. This is going to be a big test for LSU defensively. Pittsburgh has scored. The Pitt Panthers have scored the most points in the ACC up to this point. They have scored 441 points so far through their 5 games. The next closest is Stanford. Yes, traditional ACC school Stanford has scored 404. So Pitt is well ahead. Now, they are averaging 88 a game. So they don't average the most in the ACC, but they have scored the most so far through 5 games. It also is worth noting they've played 5 games so far on the season. So that's tied for the most in the ACC as well. So, look, scoring is going to be huge in this ball game, obviously. But one area to definitely keep an eye on is that 3-point line. Pitt is 6th in the ACC so far in 3-point field goal percentage. LSU is the best team in the country so far through the first month in defending the 3-point line. So that will obviously be a huge matchup to watch here. And then, of course, on the boards as well. You want a good, strong bounce back from LSU on the boards in this ball game against Pitt because, quite honestly, you were so dominant on the glass against Kansas State, and then you weren't against Charleston Southern. I mean, you got destroyed on the offensive glass in that game, and you were much better in the second half. Ended up getting the rebound margin tied, which was huge. But Pitt comes in averaging 38.4 rebounds per game so far this season. That's 7th in the ACC. Guillermo Graham is their leader with 8 rebounds per game. So LSU, it's the two things that, in terms of matchups, we'll watch the three-point line, LSU's first shot defense as well, because Pitt has been able to score plenty. And then obviously LSU on the defensive glass, preventing offensive rebounds for Pitt, and then just in general, the glass as a whole. Can LSU just take control of that like they did against Kansas State? You've seen good rim protection for LSU, so you like that a lot. Damian Collins has been really good there, and Jalen Reed has been able to even provide an inside presence for the Tigers as well. You'd hope to see maybe a little bit more of that going forward. The other thing I will point out here for LSU on the offensive side of the ball, three-pointers. We talked preseason about how LSU was going to rely much more on the three-pointer this year. Well, they haven't fallen at nearly a high enough clip. And Cam Carter's been, lights out from three-point range. He's shooting 57%. He's been awesome. Jordan Sears has been pretty damn good, too, at 36%, really pushing 38%. But those are kind of your only 2 three-point shooters that you have right now working at a good clip. What you do have, though, is the potential for that inside presence with a Jalen Reed, with Damian Collins. You've seen Victorious Miller in the mid-range game be so effective early on so far in his career, and he looks like a special player for LSU going forward. The three-point game just might not be LSU's game right now. And I want to see, I expect them to keep putting them up, but let's keep an eye on it against Pitt, given how strong they are defensively and how it's been a bit of a blind spot, we'll say, for LSU so far early in the season, consistently through the lineup outside of just Cam Carter and Jordan Sears. But it should be one heck of a game between the Tigers and the Pitt Panthers. Again, Friday afternoon, 1:30 Central, Battle of Undefeateds. Pitt comes in 5-0, LSU 4-0. Great couple tests for LSU out at the Greenbrier this weekend. We'll keep you posted on all of it. Next time on LSU Daily, final thoughts, final preview, final prediction on LSU and Vanderbilt. Be sure to be here for that. Follow me on social media. Get subscribed. Share, like, all of that greatly appreciated. And be here next time for more on LSU Daily.